So I kind of wanted to start off with what we've been doing so far, and then kind of how kind of continue on with the community keynote of last year. Um, a lot of the message last year was how we were going to drink our own champagne, because at Liferay we're kind of given a rare opportunity to use our own products. Many companies that tend to develop software, they're not giving that opportunity. So they tried their best to figure out requirements, write software, and then they release it. But seldomly do they actually have their own cases for running their own software. Um, so that's kind of a unique perspective that we get. So last year, our message was we wanted more involvement with our own products from a developer relations standpoint. So that we could basically walk the same path that everyone else does. That's trying to use Portal CE, DXP, the development tools, deployment, and basically everything that everyone does. So we wanted to see that firsthand. Specifically, we wanted to give Liferay Portal CE a little more attention because we have several cases where we use DXP and EE already. So www.liferay.com, customer portal, marketplace, all those are already using EE or DXP, but we didn't really represent CE very well. So we decided that for community-facing projects, well, we were going to use Portal CE just like anyone else. And we also wanted to use the then newly announced WeDeploy. So then using our own products, it kind of gave our team more of a standpoint, more realistic perspective on our own tools. And then it's kind of helped me with the actual feedback loop with engineering. And that, so I've actually taken some of what I've learned and have actually started improving things. So it's actually really helped. Another big requirement was we wanted to use Portal CE and WeDeploy with a real website, because I feel that supporting the site used by real people adds a very important element to the mix. I mean, you just don't get the same thing if you set up the environment in like a clean room environment. I feel that you're kind of missing this quote here, the chaos theory. Basically, in essence, it says a very small change completely changes the outcome. So without chaos, basically, you're not really supporting a real environment. It's not something that you can really create in a lab. You need something that's real. So overview. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to take the community site that actually resided in the old www.liferay.com, and we wanted to bring that out, and we wanted to move that to CE. Where the community site ran, there was actually many different things hosted from that instance, and there still is actually. Customer portal, partner portal, marketplace, the old www.liferay.com. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to preserve what we had in there. So we needed to move over 2,000 blog entries. We needed to preserve 400,000 forum posts, and we needed to bring users over. We didn't want to lose that. So here's kind of a shot from the oldest part of the forums. And if you look closely, you'll see that this is dated 14 years ago. So we didn't want to lose that. 14 years of data, we needed to preserve that and carry it over. So upgrade versus migration was the question. What I mean about that is migration. Do we just create a couple of connectors using APIs on the old server and migrate the old server to the new one instead of doing a data upgrade? And then, of course, upgrading is where you run the upgrade tool, update the database schema for the new version. Thankfully, there was some people within Liferay that had experience with this, and the decision was made for me, and I was advised by a colleague, do the upgrade, because the migration is nearly impossible to get everything pulled over. So then the next question was, well, all right, so how am I going to do an upgrade? Because I have all this stuff in there, and I don't want to move all of this over to the new site. I wanted the new site to be almost a new beginning. I wanted it to only be just the community data. So the first thing I did was I started to follow the pre-upgrade doc. I'm like, well, I have a lot of stuff I want to clean out. So how do I do that? Because I didn't want marketplace, customer portal, and all that. So I set out starting to write a upgrade hook for Liferay 6.1. I used user cleanup as my test case because it was a pretty good one. There's actually like every user defined for every system is in there, so around 200,000 users. So I made the hook to say, all right, here's the criteria where I want to take a user out. That one test case ran for 4 hours straight, just doing that one thing. I'm like, well, at this rate, it's going to take days to run my cleanup script. That's not good, because we need this upgrade to be done as fast as possible. And then this was done on 6.1. So 6.1 and below didn't have actionable dynamic queries, which I think would have solved my issue, 6.2 or above. So this next part, I want to warn you. So the warning is "Here be dragons," and what I mean by that is this is not a best practice usually, and doing so, you might get burnt. I actually wrote a 2,000-line script to actually clean out the database directly. And I don't see, where's Dave Nebinger? He's probably shaking his head now going, yep. So not a best practice. Okay, but I will go on here. So I debated though. I'm like, you know what? This was really difficult. And I had a lot of issues. Maybe waiting days for the cleanup hook would have been preferable. I ended up writing the script, and it actually went a lot like this, actually. A lot of deaths over and over and over and over and over again. So this is live footage from me trying to get this to work. So, all right, so I actually about gave up. And I about said, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to the hook. I'm creating too many issues, too many integrity issues within the database. The tool won't run. So that almost giving up, I happened upon a tool that we have internally called the references checker. Now, what this tool can do is it can actually scan your database for orphan records. So obviously, the first time I ran this, it spit out about 2 million things. I had a pretty extreme case with the community site, obviously, since I was cleaning out so much information. But data integrity issues can also come from bugs just introduced throughout the years of upgrading. So this tool, not only fixes my case, but I actually think it makes a good tool just for upgrades in general, because a lot of the upgrade issues that I see out there are integrity issues. The other nice thing is it will actually show you table relations, so it'll actually dump all the relationships within the database. So it kind of gives you some insight into the database that you didn't have before. But kind of back to the warning with modifying the database, as always, exercise extreme caution, because once again, it's modifying the database. So this involved a lot of testing, a lot of backing up. So I can't caution it enough. Now, a lot of you have not heard of the references tool, and that's because it's been internal only up to this point. But we want to actually make it available. So we're looking for testers. If anyone is interested in testing the reference checker, just email developer relations at liferay.com, and we'll actually get you set up. with the goal that we'll actually publicly release this in the near future. So that, to me, it makes a great companion to upgrade, because if you're running into problems with your upgrade, and there's a good chance it's integrity issues, you can run the references checker as a part of the process, find the issues with the database, clean them, and there's a good chance the upgrade's going to go smoother because now the database doesn't have integrity issues. So it's actually a kind of a good companion piece to upgrades, in my opinion. So I got everything cleaned up, did the standard upgrade tool, and as I say there, the references checker really helped with the upgrade. Ran into an issue with the amount of data in the forums, and logged an issue. Basically what would happen is the verify resource permissions would just hang for like 2 days during the upgrade. And it was due to the amount of data that was in the forums. So I created an issue, created my own workaround. But the good news is this made it back into the product. So we actually got this upgrade issue fixed in DXP 51 and Portal 7.1. So this is actually one example where me actually going down this path, I was actually able to improve things. So I was really happy with that. The upgrade time. So did this pan out? Did this very dangerous and potentially stupid thing that I did it pan out? So after working through the issues with the cleanup script, references checker, tuning the database server, fixing the issues with verify resource permissions, I was able to get the cleanup and upgrade to run in 3.5 hours. So yes, it did make a difference. But I'd like to point out that it was an act of desperation, and I would still highly discourage modifying the database with that being said. So, and if you're on 6.2 or above, I think actionable dynamic queries would make it irrelevant anyway. So around the same time that we were looking to do this, WeDeploy was gaining momentum. We thought, well, if we're all about trying our own stuff, let's try WeDeploy. So we started testing Liferay WeDeploy to see what requirements WeDeploy would need to properly host a Liferay instance. And I think a lot of the results from that exercise, I think, taught the team a lot, the cloud team a lot, what they need to do for DXP Cloud. So I think this was a really good exercise, and I think DXP Cloud was that much better because then we knew what we needed to actually properly run Liferay on something based on WeDeploy. So another good exercise just by trying to do it. So definitely it seems to be panning out so far. So the idea of hosting all of Liferay in the cloud was very enticing for us. From my previous life, I will say, I was responsible for every part of the environment, supporting the hardware, supporting the OS, and the software, and it's rather time consuming. So it was very enticing to basically not have to do all that. And I kind of list out some of the features that I really liked about WeDeploy just from using it. The nice things are committing the whole infrastructure as code to GitHub. Provisioning the complete Liferay environment is you run WeDeploy. Boom, the whole thing's done. Uses Docker, which makes consistency really good, and it makes it easy to be consistent across all the environments, dev, UAT, and prod. And then releases, we can put them into production very fast, sometimes within minutes. If you have an emergency, you need to push it through, it can happen really fast. And then coupled with the good backup, you can implement a pretty robust disaster recovery solution on WeDeploy, and actually use it to create the other environments, which also test the backup. I actually started to play around with DXP Cloud a little bit because curiosity got the better of me. And it's based on WeDeploy, and it actually has some features that that are exclusive to it for supporting Liferay DXP. One of those is highly scalable installation that I thought was really interesting. So it, as more traffic comes in, it can auto scale. Another big change. So I was kind of snooping around, going, what are the big changes in DXP Cloud? So I was trying to figure it out. Another one is there's actually the database service is actually connects to Amazon RDS now. So the database backend is highly scaled database solution now, without all the complexity. This is actually a big one for community site. VPN. When you log into community, it needs to hit our LDAP internally within Liferay. So having a VPN gets us a secure connection in. Builds lets you deploy to any environment. And one thing I really like about this is you can actually revert to an older build. So it's like, oh, I deployed this into production. It has some issues. You can actually just go down the list and go, oh, that was the last known working good one. So I'll go back to that one now. So definitely some things that was not really all that easy before that it does. So, and then I already talked about the auto scaling. So another big part, this is CE. So, what am I going to do with clustering? So I have clustering or not here. What's the plan here? I spent a lot of time, maybe even an unhealthy amount of time, on what to do with the clustering on WeDeploy specifically, because WeDeploy runs in the cloud, and if you want to do cache replication in the cloud, you automatically need to be looking at Unicast. I was going to go through kind of the different options. First is the out-of-the-box local cache. So obviously it involves no replication. There's a few peer-to-peer cache options that we can choose from. RMI replication is the default. Oops. Okay. Excuse the guy who can't run stuff. All right. Anyway, RMI replication is the default that is out of the box for CE. You can also use JGroups, which is actually a customization, and then there's what I call cluster link replication, which is the one that's in DXP. So there's actually 3 options for cache replication, and I kind of go through the pros and cons, I guess. For RMI, it's very difficult to configure Unicast for RMI. Every entity has its own config, so if 4-node cluster could end up with 1,200 lines of config in your portal ext file. So that one I did not like very much. JGroups, the issue with this one is it's a pretty hefty customization for CE. It's not there by default. It does perform better, and Unicast is very simple with it. Cluster link, well, the con for a CE user is it's DXP only. It's custom built, optimized for DXP, and it's probably the easiest Unicast configuration because you just have to change one thing. There's also Terracotta server array. I did kind of briefly take a look at it, but it's probably the most complex customization, and it's usually overkill for most installations. So I kind of just said, yeah, we're not going to do that one. Day one, I ran into issues. Communicate with the nodes communicating on WeDeploy. We think maybe it was possibly just because we were such an early adopter, there might have been some issues there. And so what we ended up doing was going with one node with a failover node. So, and the only time that I ever need that is with deployment. So I actually was talking to the WeDeploy team recently, and we actually think we can actually get 0 downtime working with WeDeploy and the Liferay service, which it would actually eliminate the need for the second node, because 0 downtime will actually, when you deploy a new version, it'll actually make sure that node comes up, passes a health check, and then it will hand the traffic over. So it would actually eliminate the need for that standby node. So that's actually something I'm going to try to look into when I get back next week. So a little bit about some of the development of the community site that I ran into. The first thing is the nice thing for me, a lot of the theme was already built for me, because the first revision of the site we actually built on Electric, and it already included much of the front end work was done for me, which was very good because I don't know if I could have actually done it if that wasn't done. The documentation, it does go into great detail on how to create a theme, but there isn't really, I found there really wasn't much background on how it actually works. So there's this nice blog post by Lewis out there that goes into great detail on how themes are implemented using Clay and their relationships to Bootstrap. For someone who really didn't know what they were doing, well, like me, it was actually great to have that post out there. So it really kind of provided some insight that I didn't have before. So it was really nice. So UI customizations, probably the part I was the most confused with. If you look in the documentation, we discourage the use of fragment bundles. I even think we say they're deprecated. I would like to stop using them as much as possible, and then just use it to inject customizations, using either dynamic includes, or there's actually a new dynamic section within 7.1 that lets you actually customize a whole section of a JSP. So what I'm currently on 7.0 CEGA6. When I'm going to start looking to go to 7.1 soon, and what I'm planning to do is use the fragment bundles to actually use that to only inject where I want to customize the JSP, to try to get away from actually replacing the JSP. So another harebrained idea I have is to use the Liferay buffer util to actually do that injection. In the end, I want to try to keep the source JSP untouched, so make it upgrade proof. But I will warn you at the moment, this is all mad science. It's all something I'm just trying to figure out. If it ever actually works, I will document that, because I think that would be really helpful. So we did a few custom applications. You've probably seen some of them within the community site. Meetup connector was probably the simplest. It connects to meetup.com and just lists out our user groups. It uses actual a REST connection. So that was actually one of the first 7 applications that I made and put in there. Spam control was actually a 6.1 app that I migrated, which it was interesting because it has a lot of Liferay integration. So model listeners, service wrappers, MVC action commands, because it heavily integrates with the forums. So it was actually a really good one. It was a good example. I also needed to customize the mail service impl for Amazon SCS integration to process SNS bounce backs from SES. To be honest, that wasn't very straightforward, but we did get that working. So content management was, another area that I basically rebooted because I cleaned out all of the content from the previous site. So, now what do? I pretty much have a fresh start. So, it's a pretty standard content site. It's made up of several templates and structures, ADTs for navigation. One thing that I kept wishing over and over and over again, I'm like, it'd be really nice if there was a way to store all that with a module. So every time I wanted to update my content, I could just deploy a module, because it's really easy for environments to get out of sync, is what I noticed. So I don't know if there's a way to do that, but it's something I would like to do. I ended up using a LAR for the initial import. It was okay for the migration, but it doesn't work long term, in my opinion. So I stopped basically updating the content with LAR. I actually enabled local staging, and then we do the updates there and just publish it. There's also the resource importer and site initializer, which is a newer option. But I didn't feel, but there wasn't a you couldn't do incremental updates, which is what I was looking for. So none of those can do it. So obviously, I've used DXP, I've used EE, and now I had a site on CE. So, what do I think some of the differences are now? So at the top level, developing for either one is pretty much the same. So developing modules, ADTs, themes, it's pretty much interchangeable. You might have to deal with some version dependencies, and a theme I think still has, it'll tie to a version, but you change those things and I have found that your apps should work one way or the other in either product. CE tends to be more do-it-yourself and support yourself. I mean, that's what the DXP subscription gives you. You get additional help to support it. An example of do-it-yourself is how the clustering is. You compile it and support it yourself. Although I heard a rumor that we're putting it back in, so that might not be the case anymore. With DXP, the cluster link module is provided and supported out of the box. So there's that support word again. And so it makes deploying to cloud environments much easier. The other big things is, to me, this is actually one I personally see, is the ongoing product updates for Liferay DXP. As everyone knows, with Portal CE, once a new version is released, we stop supporting the older version, which is okay, unless you run into a severe issue or security issues, or if you need to actually fix that instance. Then your options are backport the fix yourself or upgrade to the newest GA, where DXP it will actually support years beyond the release. So another big change. So anyway, I'm going to kind of end with I had a funny conversation with someone about CE when I was starting this out. About a year ago, I was planning to run it with Docker. Well, a year ago, we hadn't really ramped the Docker support up yet. So I was cautioned. I was told, we don't really support that, and you shouldn't do it. And then I pointed out, well, I'm looking to do it on CE. I'm not supported on anything I do. So they're like, that's a good point. So you probably can do it. So I guess a pro of CE is nothing is ever out of support scope, because you are your support. But you can also get support, from the community forums and chat. So there is that. And with that is all I have. So thank you very much.